Are you tired of feeling trapped in relationships that drain your energy, distort your perception, and leave you questioning your worth? Do you often find yourself justifying mistreatment or tolerating toxic behavior in the name of love? If you've ever stayed silent to avoid conflict, ignored red flags, or accepted behavior that you know then this video is for you. In this powerful journey, we'll explore the profound teachings of Carl Jung and how they can help you break free from emotional dependency, toxic relationships, and self-betrayal. We'll dive into the concept of individuation, the process of reclaiming your true self by confronting your shadow and stopping the cycles of emotional manipulation that have held you back. By watching this video, you'll learn how to recognize and stop justifying behaviors that are harmful to your soul. We'll guide you through the steps to reclaim your dignity, set healthy boundaries, and embrace self-love as your foundation for healthier relationships moving forward. This isn't just another video on love or self-help. It's a call to action, a transformative experience that will help you awaken your inner strength. Stay with us until the end, and you'll walk away empowered with the clarity and courage to start living life on your terms. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated on all our latest content. 1. Covert emotional manipulation. Have you ever found yourself feeling guilty for simply setting a boundary, expressing a need, or not conforming to someone's expectations? That is emotional manipulation in its most insidious form, and it can slowly wear down your spirit and sense of self-worth. Jung deeply believed that when we deny our truth, when we allow ourselves to shrink to avoid someone's emotional punishment, the soul becomes ill. This form of manipulation doesn't just aim to change your actions, it seeks to diminish your essence, to make you question your own needs and desires. It makes you feel wrong for being authentic, as if who you are is less important than meeting another's demands. Over time, this creates a dangerous cycle where we start bending and breaking, not for our growth, but to appease someone else's emotional needs. And that's when the inner battle begins, leading to a disconnection from our true selves. Exercise. Reflect on moments when you acted from guilt rather than your true, authentic desire. What does this pattern reveal about your relationships? Who is it that often triggers these feelings in you? And why do you continue to allow them to do so? For me, I've found that it's often those closest to us who unknowingly or knowingly pull these strings. And it can be so heartbreaking to recognize that the guilt is often more about their comfort than your truth. Over time, this kind of manipulation wears on you, like a slow, persistent drain that leaves you questioning your worth, your place, and your right to say no. 2. Contempt disguised as honesty. We've all heard it, haven't we? The phrase "I'm just being direct" is used as a justification for hurtful words or actions. It's a facade, a cruel attempt to hide contempt under the mask of honesty. But honesty without empathy and love is nothing more than cruelty in its most acceptable form. Jung argued that our personalities thrive on recognition, love, and acceptance, on being seen for who we truly are, not on being constantly criticized or belittled. Constant, harsh truth doesn't build you up, it breaks you down. It chips away at your self-esteem, leaving you doubting your worth. In a healthy, loving relationship, you should never have to wonder if you are enough. Authentic love nurtures, uplifts, and cherishes you. It doesn't tear you down to feel superior. Exercise. Think back to the words that have cut deep, the phrases that still echo in your heart and your mind. Were they truly intended to help you grow, or were they merely tools of control, tools to push you into a mold someone else thought you should fit? Reflect on the people who used these words. Did their honesty feel like a mask for something much darker? How often have you allowed this cruelty to pass as truth? 3. Control disguised as protection. This is one of the most heartbreaking forms of manipulation, when someone limits your freedom, your relationships, or your personal space under the guise of protecting you. They say it's for your good, but what they're doing is projecting their fears and insecurity onto you. They want control, not out of love, but out of their need to manage their chaos. Jung spoke of this as the shadow, the part of the self that is poorly integrated, those parts that seek control, because the fear of not having it creates turmoil within. But love, real love, never takes away your autonomy. True love allows you to flourish, to be free to explore, to make your own mistakes, and to rise on your own. Exercise. Reflect on the areas of your life where you felt your freedom restricted. Have you ever mistaken this control for love? Perhaps at the time you thought it was protective, but now, looking back, do you see it for what it was? Did you allow someone else's fear to dictate your life choices? And, most importantly, what will you do now to take back your freedom and trust yourself again? 4. Gaslighting, distortion of your emotional reality. One of the most soul-wrenching forms of manipulation is gaslighting. It's when someone denies your perception of reality, causing you to question your own emotions, thoughts, and experiences. They make you believe that you're exaggerating, overreacting, or even that you're losing your mind. Imagine the turmoil of feeling something deeply, and then being told you're wrong for feeling it. Jung's insight: everything that irritates us about others can lead to an understanding of ourselves, is powerful. But when you're constantly made to doubt your reality, your emotional foundation begins to crack. Gaslighting isn't just about lies. It's about dismantling your self-trust, your inner compass. Over time, this type of manipulation can make you feel small, insignificant, and like you're walking through life in a fog, unsure of what's true. Exercise. Think of a time when you felt an emotion, and yet someone made you doubt it. How did you talk to yourself after that? Did you hold on to your truth, or did you start questioning your feelings? That internal dialogue is vital. It's where you either stand strong or allow someone else to steal your sense of reality. I've experienced this myself, and it's excruciating to feel like your emotional truths are invalidated, but I've learned that trusting myself, even when others doubt me, is the only way to preserve my inner peace. 5. Contempt for your inner world. This form of emotional abuse occurs when someone dismisses or belittles your dreams, passions, or interests because they don't understand them or don't share them. It's painful to witness your inner fire being extinguished by someone you care about. Yet this happens more often than we realize. Jung's powerful words, "What you resist persists, what you accept transforms," resonate deeply here. You don't have to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's emotional reality. No one has the right to crush your hopes or belittle what ignites your spirit. Your passions are an essential part of who you are, and anyone who tries to snuff them out is denying the very essence of your being. Exercise. Think about the parts of yourself you've silenced just to avoid bothering someone else. What parts of your soul are begging to speak again? I can't help but think about the times I've hidden my creative ideas or passions to avoid seeming too much. But it's only when I embrace those parts of myself, no longer silencing my desires, that I truly felt alive again. 6. Constant lack of empathy. Empathy is the foundation of meaningful connection. But if you're with someone who never validates your pain, dismisses your emotions, or consistently makes everything about themselves, you are with someone who is emotionally inaccessible. Over time, this lack of empathy erodes your spirit, leaving you feeling invisible and unimportant. Jung believed that without empathy, there can be no deep connection, just an exchange of superficial needs. Emotional support isn't just about being there, it's about being there with understanding, compassion, and care. If someone can't show you that kind of empathy, it's a sign that they don't have the emotional capacity to connect with you in a meaningful way. Exercise. Recall the last time you cried or suffered in front of someone. Did they comfort you, or did they judge you? What did you need in that moment? Validation, empathy, a listening ear. It's heartbreaking when you realize that someone you care about isn't capable of offering that simple but essential human kindness. For me, it has always been difficult to accept that emotional neglect isn't a reflection of me, it's a reflection of their inability to connect. But as painful as it is, recognizing this has been a turning point in my healing. 7. Repeated and justified betrayal. Repeated betrayal, especially when disguised as an accident or a mistake, is one of the cruelest forms of emotional manipulation. An apology without change is not an apology at all. It's just a tactic to keep you from leaving. Jung understood this well, saying that compulsive repetition is often a sign of unhealed trauma. If someone continues to hurt you with the same actions, yet convinces you it was just an unintentional mistake, you might be blind to the larger pattern. What you're not seeing is that they are playing on your emotions to trap you in a cycle of hope and hurt. Exercise. Think about the times you've said, "This is the last time," only to return to the same situation. What kept you there? What were you truly afraid of? For me, the hardest part was facing the reality that some people never change. I kept returning out of hope, out of a belief that love could fix it. But eventually, I realized that love doesn't heal disrespect, it simply fuels it. Breaking free from that cycle was one of the most difficult, yet liberating things I've ever done. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. 8. Selfishness disguised as self-sufficiency. There are people in our lives who don't know how to give because their world revolves around themselves, their needs, their desires, their comfort. They take from you time and time again, without ever truly offering in return. You become the one who sustains the relationship, the one who remembers, who cares, while they only show up when it's convenient for them. This isn't a relationship, it's emotional exploitation, a one-sided bond that leaves you drained and unappreciated. Exercise. Think about the relationships in your life where you give more than 70%. How does that make you feel? Do you speak up and express your need for reciprocity, or do you just endure it? I've been there too, constantly giving without receiving. The realization that I was the one always sustaining the relationship hit me hard, and it made me question what love is. True love is about balance, about both people showing up for each other. Anything less is an emotional drain. 9. Constant sarcasm as a form of connection. Sarcasm, when it becomes the only way of communicating, is a form of passive aggression. Disguised as humor, it leaves behind invisible wounds, wounds that often go unacknowledged. Jung said that the unconscious finds ways to express what we're too afraid to say aloud, and often sarcasm is just repressed contempt masquerading as wit. It's the kind of behavior that chips away at your emotional foundation, making you doubt whether anyone truly cares about you. Exercise. Think about the sarcastic remarks that have stuck with you over time. What direct emotion do you think was being expressed through those words? For me, sarcasm feels like a slow burn. It's hurtful in a way that isn't always obvious at first, but over time, the sting lingers. Sarcasm is often a shield for vulnerability, and when you're on the receiving end, it makes you question whether the person truly values you or just sees you as a target for their jabs. 10. Emotional indifference as punishment. One of the quietest, yet most damaging forms of emotional abuse is emotional withdrawal, being ignored or made to feel invisible. It's an act of stonewalling, and it can be more painful than any harsh word. Jung emphasized that humans need a connection to prevent fragmentation. Emotional indifference is not neutral, it's emotional violence, and it can break a person's spirit. Exercise. Think about a time you were intentionally ignored. How did that affect your self-image? What did you do to be seen again? For me, being ignored felt like I no longer existed in someone's world, and that was devastating. The need to be seen, to be acknowledged. is so fundamental to our well-being. When that's taken away, it can feel like the very core of who you are is being denied. Each of these behaviors we encounter has far-reaching psychological consequences, the kind that silently erode our sense of self-worth and inner peace. They are not fleeting moments or simple reactions. They are seeds planted deep within, and left unchecked, they grow into a disconnection from our very essence. The most devastating part is that over time, the more we tolerate them, the more we normalize these toxic patterns. We begin to accept that this confusion, silence, minimization, and emotional exploitation are what we deserve. But let me tell you this, you do not deserve any of that. You do not deserve to be confused, silenced, minimized, or used. You deserve a space where you can breathe freely, where you can feel deeply without justification, and speak openly without your words being twisted and weaponized against you. You deserve real love. And real love starts within you. Carl Jung didn't teach us to hate others. He taught us to stop hating ourselves for allowing what hurts us. That's the difference between being trapped in a cycle of pain and breaking free. So, pause for a moment, reflect on each of the points discussed here, and ask yourself, which of these behaviors have I allowed to become normal in my life? Which of them is hardest for me to recognize in myself? Which of these toxic patterns has been repeating in my story for years? Only when we truly recognize these behaviors for what they are, can we choose to break free from them. Only when we name them can we begin to heal. When Jung spoke of the shadow, he wasn't merely referring to the dark aspects of ourselves that we try to suppress. He was speaking about everything we repress: our pain, yes, but also our voice, our boundaries, and our dignity. Tolerating unacceptable behaviors is often a way of reinforcing that shadow, a way of continuing to hide the very things we aren't yet ready to defend about ourselves. Repeating toxic relationships isn't a sign of weakness, it's a symptom of an unresolved wound, an unconscious injury that has yet to heal. Freud explained that the compulsion to repeat is rooted in unresolved trauma. We find ourselves repeatedly attaching to the same type of people, unconsciously hoping for a different outcome. It's not that we are masochistic, it's that there's a part of us still holding on to hope, seeking validation that was never given. When you normalize manipulation, indifference, or a lack of empathy, you are making a silent pact with that wound. It's not a verbal agreement, it's an emotional contract. It's the moment when you decide that a little affection, even if it's wrapped in lovelessness, is enough. But Jung reminds us that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to guide our lives, and we'll mistake it for fate. Deep psychology doesn't ask us to hate those who have hurt us. It asks us to recognize how those experiences have shaped us, so we can stop giving our energy to the same kind of people, the same destructive patterns. Because every time we tolerate behavior that breaks us down, we are teaching our unconscious mind that this is love. There's something even more devastating than the pain of being hurt, the pain of justifying it. That's the slow poison of unhealthy relationships. The lies we tell ourselves to make the pain more bearable. Everyone messes up, nobody's perfect, it wasn't that bad. But the truth is, the severity isn't always in the event itself, it's in how we swallow it, how we bury it deep inside, until there's no more space for our soul to breathe. When someone stays in a relationship where they are humiliated, it's not because they have no other options. It's because their emotional system has been conditioned to believe that anything is better than being abandoned. And this is where Jung's work intersects with Adler's. When a person has a deeply rooted sense of inferiority, they can find themselves in imbalanced relationships where one person carries all the emotional weight. But there's a moment in everyone's journey when they must decide, I will no longer tolerate this. I will no longer allow myself to be treated as less than. That is a profound, spiritual, psychological, and emotional act. It is the moment you stop waiting for the world to treat you right and start treating yourself with the love and respect you've always deserved. That inner shift, though invisible to others, is life-changing. Freud described the pleasure principle as our unconscious drive to avoid pain, to seek comfort. But when you've learned to associate love with suffering, pleasure becomes an enigma. You begin to crave emotional drama, the intensity of highs and lows, thinking that this is a connection, but it's not. It's just the echo of a wound, the repetition of a painful pattern that feels familiar. Many of these unacceptable behaviors hurt, not because they're overtly harmful, but because they're subtle, because they come from the people we love most, and that makes them all the more dangerous. It's hard to set boundaries with someone you still idealize, someone you still see as a savior, but this is where Jung's concept of individuation comes in. It's the process of breaking free from the illusion that the other person is your savior, your source of healing. Do you want to know when true transformation begins? It begins the day you find the courage to defend what you used to silence, not out of hatred, but out of firmness, not with violence, but with truth. That is the moment when your dignity stops being a theory and it becomes a lived reality. Someone who loves you doesn't play with your wounds. They respect them, they honor them, and they care for them with tenderness. If there's someone in your life who uses your vulnerabilities to invalidate, dominate, or make you feel small, that's not love. It's a toxic pattern that you need to break. It's not a mistake. It's a behavior you must not justify any longer. Jung said the goal of life isn't perfection, it's wholeness. And part of that wholeness is having the courage to say, I won't accept this anymore. Because silence in the face of mistreatment is not nobility, it's disconnection. And you deserve to return to yourself. The most dangerous relationships are not the ones that shout at you. They are the ones that quietly dim your light without you even noticing. They drain your energy, minimize your worth, and make you doubt what you know to be true. And the tragedy is, they do it in the name of love, but love is never constant confusion. Love is clarity, respect, and freedom. And you deserve that. Adler's wisdom on the meaningfulness of life resonates deeply. It's one where we are free to grow, to develop our true selves, without being subdued or subduing others. In return, if the relationship you are in stifles your growth, demands that you shrink into a version of yourself that doesn't fit, then you are not in love, you are confined within an emotional prison. The worst part? It can often feel like a quiet suffocation. There are phrases that, when spoken even once, become permanently etched in your mind, playing on a loop for years. You're exaggerating. It wasn't a big deal, you're too sensitive. The first time, it might sting. The second time, it hurts a little more. But after the 100th time, these words build walls, invisible yet firm, separating you from your emotional truth. These walls don't just keep out the painful words, they keep out your authentic self. The unacceptable isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it hides in the mundane moments, those little dismissive comments like "I don't care what happens to you" or "do whatever you want," said with a sneer of contempt. There's no shouting, no dramatic outbursts, but it's still mistreatment. This subtle denial of your emotional existence is enough to slowly erode your sense of worth. When someone diminishes your being consistently, it does more harm than any loud argument could. You don't need a raised voice to be disrespected. The quiet, constant negation of your feelings, your needs, your worth is just as damaging, if not more so. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Jung believed that every relationship acts as a mirror, a reflection of our deepest truths, both the good and the painful. When someone makes you feel small, voiceless, or confused, they aren't necessarily introducing something new into your life. They're merely touching an old wound that you might not have fully faced yet. But now you have the opportunity to. Viktor Frankl famously said that suffering is an inevitable part of life, But what separates the transformative suffering from the destructive one is how we respond to it. Suffering can break us or shape us. It can either steal our light or refine it into something stronger. The soul, as Jung wisely noted, can't fake coherence. We can put on a mask, smile in public, and pretend everything is fine. But if inside we feel the weight of anguish, insomnia, anxiety, or constant confusion, something isn't aligning. We might even tell ourselves that we're fine, but deep down, we know it's not true. You're not here reading this by chance. There's a part of you waking up, the part that no longer wants to live in a half-life, to accept rationed love, or to stay in relationships where you're constantly justifying your existence. That part of you is calling for a different reality, one where you can truly breathe, where you can stop sacrificing your peace for the sake of others. True emotional health begins when you decide once and for all not to trade your peace anymore. And while that day may not come with fireworks, it feels like the start of something entirely new, a life where you can simply exist as you are. When Jung spoke about the privilege of life being the ability to be who you truly are, he was encouraging us to stop hiding behind masks, stop disguising ourselves to be accepted. What begins with a disguise ends in the loss of identity. If you had to become someone else to feel loved, that wasn't love. It was an emotional transaction. And you weren't born into this world to negotiate your essence. You were born to share your truth with the world. Jung's contribution to our understanding of the human experience is immense. He taught us not to look at life's surface, but to peer into the deep roots of the unconscious. And when someone belittles your pain, dismisses your boundaries, or tells you that your emotions are too much, they are projecting their unresolved shadows onto you. Jung explained that people often project what they cannot face in themselves. Every time you tolerate emotional contempt or disrespect, you are unknowingly allowing someone to unload their darkness onto you. It's not about you, it's about their fear and inability to face their truths. There's one deeply unacceptable behavior that is often overlooked. When someone mocks your healing process, it's a subtle form of cruelty that is designed to keep you stuck, to prevent you from growing beyond where you are. Jung taught that individuation, the process of becoming the truest version of yourself, often disturbs those who are still trapped behind their masks. If someone discredits your emotional progress, they're not doing it because you need to backtrack. They're doing it because your growth highlights their stagnation. And when you allow this constant invalidation to continue, you are slowly losing yourself. Jung was clear that depression is like a woman dressed in black when she comes. Don't push her away. Invite her in, sit with her, and listen to what she has to say. The point is not to suppress our pain, but to understand it and learn from it. When your emotions are treated as a nuisance, a burden, or too much, you are not in a healthy emotional space. Your sadness, fear, and anger are not mistakes, they are messengers, each one bringing important insights. One of the most unacceptable behaviors, from a Jungian perspective, is when someone forces you to betray your intuition. Your intuition is your most sacred ally. It is the voice of your soul. When someone pressures you to ignore that voice, they are leading you away from your truth, away from the path that's meant for you. We are not meant to silence ourselves to make others comfortable. And the moment we decide not to betray our truth anymore is the moment our healing begins. That moment is powerful. It may feel like a quiet decision, a small act of self-care, but it is a decision that has the potential to transform everything in your life, because real love, love that nourishes, builds, and empowers, never requires you to abandon who you are. True love, as Jung reminds us, honors your boundaries, respects your journey, and supports your individuation process. It's time to stop letting anyone steal your peace. You deserve to live a life where your essence is cherished, not diminished. You deserve love that affirms your being, not one that forces you to deny it. Jung taught us that intuition is a psychic function, a deep inner knowing that communicates through our unconscious mind. When a relationship makes you constantly doubt what you instinctively know to be true, you are losing the most sacred guide you have, your inner compass. This compass is what allows you to navigate life with clarity and purpose. Without it, you become adrift, uncertain, disconnected from your truth. Tolerating this constant undermining of your emotional understanding is a silent form of aggression, one that wears away at your sense of self, without you even realizing the damage being done. Jung also emphasized that the soul thrives on recognition. The very core of who we are flourishes when we are seen, understood, and acknowledged for our growth, healing, and efforts. When someone consistently disregards or minimizes your attempts to improve or better yourself, the message is crystal clear. No matter how much you do, it will never be enough. That is a destructive message. To receive it chips away at your sense of worth, leaving you feeling unseen and unimportant. It is a psychic wound that echoes deeply within the soul, one that can lead to feelings of hopelessness and self-doubt. When someone demands forgiveness without ever making an effort to change, they are not seeking redemption, they are asking for impunity. Jung believed that real change only comes when a person confronts their inner conflicts and makes the conscious decision to heal. If someone continues to harm you but never addresses their own shadow, their actions are not the result of growth, they are an attempt to manipulate you into forgiving them without any real transformation. True forgiveness is not about exposing yourself to the same harm over and over again. It's about letting go, but with awareness, understanding that you are freeing yourself from a cycle of pain. One of the greatest misconceptions in relationships is the idea that empathy is earned through sacrifice. Jung would challenge this belief entirely. Sacrifice made without an acknowledgement of your truth only breeds resentment. Resentment is a red flag, a sign that you've tolerated the intolerable for far too long. If you are always the one yielding, silencing your needs, and adapting to fit the mold of what others want, you are not in a reciprocal relationship. You are in an emotionally draining asymmetry. Love, real love, requires balance, respect, and the space to be fully yourself, without fear of losing that love in the process. Jung also taught that true individuation, the process of becoming your true self, requires separation. It means walking away from relationships that hurt you, even if they come with declarations of love. True love does not demand that you sacrifice your mental or emotional health to keep it alive. If a relationship is forcing you to compromise your well-being, it is no longer love. It has become a toxic entanglement that needs to be released for the sake of your soul's health. The most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from situations that demand you to sacrifice your truth. When you silence your hurt to avoid discomfort, you are doing the opposite of what Jung encouraged. You are not making the unconscious conscious. You are burying it deeper, letting it fester. Every emotion you suppress, every unspoken truth you leave unsaid, accumulates and manifests in ways that harm your physical and emotional health. The unexpressed pain turns into somatization, anxiety, and insomnia. If you are in a relationship where you feel like you cannot share your feelings without fearing a negative reaction, you are in an emotionally unsafe environment. You are not in a space where love can truly grow. You are in a space where your dignity is constantly under attack. You cannot build a fulfilling, authentic life if your emotional foundation is held together by silently renouncing your dignity. Carl Jung spoke of one of the most common ailments of the modern soul: self-forgetting. We don't realize how much we've lost until we find ourselves justifying harm, tolerating mistreatment, and confusing dependency with love. We begin to accept emotional crumbs, telling ourselves it's better than nothing. But you were not born to eat crumbs. You were born to sit at the table of your truth, to receive the full meal of love and respect that you deserve. Some relationships don't teach us to love. They teach us to endure, The more we endure, the further we drift from who we truly are. That disconnection from our authentic selves creates a deep void, a chasm between what we need and what we accept. And this void is so deep that even when someone arrives with real love, we no longer know how to receive it. We've grown accustomed to combat, to proving our worth in unhealthy ways, and when real care is offered, we don't know how to let it in. Erich Fromm spoke of love as an art, a practice that requires emotional maturity, responsibility, respect, and understanding. But when we're too accustomed to suffering, even love feels foreign, and we miss the beauty of it when it's right in front of us. If you are constantly explaining basic boundaries like don't yell, don't lie, or don't ignore me, then you are not in a relationship with an emotionally mature partner. You are in a relationship with someone who is projecting their immaturity onto you. Jung's work highlighted the psychological challenge of breaking free from the emotional savior trap, the false belief that your love will somehow transform the other person. But as Jung wisely said, no one changes until they face their own shadow. If you are doing the inner work that belongs to someone else, you are not helping them. You are perpetuating their emotional immaturity. You are enabling them to remain stagnant while you drain yourself dry. When you tolerate behaviors that hurt you, your unconscious mind interprets it as agreement. The body speaks, the soul feels, and when you stay, even if you cry, suffer, or scream inside, the message you're sending is, this is okay. But it is not okay, and deep down, your soul knows it. Viktor Frankl spoke about inner freedom being the last human right. Even in the face of suffering, tolerating humiliation, contempt, emotional abandonment, or psychological manipulation is not strength, it's surrender. True strength lies in knowing when to walk away. To preserve your peace, your dignity, and your soul, you deserve more than suffering in silence. You deserve to be loved fully. Without compromise, you deserve to reclaim your sense of self, to rediscover the voice you've silenced, and to step into the life you were always meant to live. You were not born to tolerate mistreatment, and you are not bound by any relationship that demands you compromise your integrity. Your soul is meant to soar, not to shrink. Don't let anyone dim your light. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 3 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. There is no fulfilling life in surrendering your inner truth. When you feel like you're not enough, when your worth feels like it's constantly under attack, it feeds into a vicious cycle. You choose relationships that confirm that lack, that reinforce the belief that you don't matter, that you're not worthy of true love. The deeper this cycle sinks, the harder it becomes to break free. You start to believe this is what you deserve, this is what you're meant to have. The truth is, the less you love yourself, the more likely you are to expose yourself to people who mirror this lack, who teach you with their actions and words that you aren't enough. And the more they reinforce this message, the harder it is to believe you are worthy of anything more. The first act of healing is to stop that cycle, to stop repeating what has never served you. And for that, you need to awaken. Carl Rogers spoke of unconditional positive self-regard, a love for yourself not only when you are strong, beautiful, productive, or good, but also when you are broken, vulnerable, sad, or confused. If someone only loves you when you're good, when you're performing at your best, they don't love you. They love your facade, the image of yourself you present to the world. And you are not just a facade, you are a human being, complex, multifaceted, with layers of emotion, dreams, and struggles that deserve to be seen and loved. Some relationships infantilize us, making us feel like we must behave perfectly to avoid punishment W, whether that's silence, indifference, or abandonment. That's not adult love. It's emotional regression. Jung reminded us that inner growth requires us to leave behind the wounded child who seeks constant approval and embrace the adult who can set boundaries without guilt or fear of rejection. True love doesn't require you to shrink. It doesn't demand you deny yourself to keep the peace. Emotional dependency often arises from the fear of facing our emptiness. But that void can never be filled by another person. It can only be filled by you, by your commitment to yourself, your care, and your inner strength. As D.W. Winnicott said, "The good enough mother isn't perfect. She's the one who doesn't abandon. Be that mother to yourself. Be that support. The one who is there for you when you are broken, when you are vulnerable, when you need love most. Enduring in silence, swallowing your hurt, your disappointment, or your frustration isn't love, it's unresolved trauma. And that trauma doesn't heal with time. It heals with conscious action. It heals through therapy, reflection, self-awareness, and decisions that, although painful in the moment, build the foundation of freedom. As Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is becoming who you truly are. And you are not your wound. You were not born to wear your pain as a badge of honor. You were born to rise above it, to heal from it, and to step into the life you deserve. Many of us spend years tolerating mistreatment because no one ever taught us to discern. We grew up in environments where emotional abuse was normalized, where shouting was commonplace, where contempt was routine. Just because you grew up this way doesn't mean you have to live this way. Awareness changes destiny, and you are already aware you are waking up. Your worth isn't something to be negotiated or begged for. It's not something that can be bought. It is something that is recognized, sustained, and honored. Every time you say, "I won't allow this anymore," you are honoring your soul, telling it that it is worthy of respect, love, and peace. When the soul is honored, it starts opening doors, clearing paths that once seemed impossible. Psychology tells us that when we repeatedly surround ourselves with toxic relationships, it's not bad luck, it's unconscious programming. But, as Jung said, you're not defined by what happened to you. You're defined by what you choose to become from what happened to you. Today, you can choose differently. You're not here to endure, to tolerate, to shrink. You are here to transform. And that transformation begins with you. It begins when you stop explaining the inexplicable, justifying the unjustifiable, and loving people who don't even know how to love themselves. There is a force within you that has been silenced for far too long. It is your intuition, the quiet, steady whisper that speaks to you even when everything around you seems chaotic. Jung saw intuition as a bridge to the unconscious. It is the voice of your deepest knowing, and it knows things that your mind has not yet fully accepted. Trauma often makes us hyper-loyal to those who hurt us. It's a bond forged in pain and fear. The brain, in its quest for survival, will often choose what is familiar, even if that familiarity is harmful. But you didn't come to this world to repeat someone else's story. You came to write your own. And in your story, there is no longer room for those who do not know how to care for you. Every time you forgive someone without them changing, your unconscious learns that no matter how much they hurt you, you will always return. But this is not nobility. It is self-abandonment. And when the soul is abandoned too many times, it begins to dim, it begins to wither, it starts breaking you from within until you no longer recognize your reflection in the mirror. The pain you feel, the confusion you carry, is your soul's last attempt to say, "Listen to me, stop ignoring me." The most sacred work you can do isn't to become stronger, it's to become more honest with yourself, to become more coherent, to become more you. When you can stand firm in your truth, when you stop hiding parts of yourself to make others comfortable, you will feel a shift, because your energy will no longer vibrate in lack. It will vibrate in clarity. You will stop tolerating disrespect, mistreatment, and manipulation, because you will see it for what it truly is. Want respect? Respect yourself first. Want care? Care for yourself first. Want to be chosen unconditionally? Choose yourself unconditionally. No one can give you what you haven't already decided to sustain within yourself. The deepest relationships are not those that give you everything. You will find that the deepest relationships are those that don't take anything essential from you. If someone demands that you leave parts of yourself behind to stay, they are not asking for a relationship, they are asking for a mold. And you are not moldable. You are authentic. Some wounds reopen repeatedly because you haven't learned to say, "Not here." That simple yet powerful phrase can change everything. When you say, "Not here," you are setting a boundary that shifts the entire course of your life. You are aligning yourself with the truth of your soul. And when you do, the universe will meet your clarity with open doors, with people who will not diminish you, with relationships that allow you to thrive without fear, without hiding, without apology. But first, you must stop dimming your light. You must stop tolerating what you know deep down isn't right for you. You are not broken. You are awakening. You are emerging from years of emotional programming that taught you love is suffering, that wanting means yielding until you disappear, and that being in a relationship is more important than having peace. But as Jung said, those who look outward dream, but those who look inward awaken. And now you are no longer here to keep dreaming those same old stories where you always lose. You have been loyal to those who did not care for you. You have given love without reservation, hoping they would understand your soul. But the truth is this: no one will understand your soul until you understand it first. No one will love you fully until you love yourself fully. Emotional dignity is not arrogance. It is the root from which all real love grows. Without it, everything that blooms will be fragile. But today, you can stop apologizing for feeling, for setting boundaries, for walking away from what no longer serves you. You don't need an elaborate justification to protect your peace. You have the right to close the door with the same energy you once left it open with, out of fear of being alone. Life will continue to test you, but now you have something you didn't before: clarity. And that clarity is earned through pain, through tough decisions, through emotional courage. Now that you have it, now that you have awakened, don't fall back asleep in the face of what you know harms you. Some people won't understand your transformation. They'll call you exaggerated, selfish, or cold. But you don't owe them an explanation. They didn't feel your silent nights, your hidden tears, or your attempts to fit into something too small for you. Let them think what they want. Keep walking. Your soul doesn't scream, but when it's been ignored too many times, it begins to break you from within. That pain? It's your soul's last way of saying, "Listen to me. Don't wait until you reach your breaking point to make a change. Take that bold step today. Do it because you've finally grasped the undeniable truth. Love is never something you should beg for. It's something you honor, something you protect, something you choose to give and receive with integrity. Let that sink in. There is no true healing without making a decisive choice to let go of what no longer serves you. There's no real freedom without the courage to set boundaries that honor your worth. And perhaps most painfully, there's no authentic self-love without renouncing the lies you've told yourself about who you should be, who you need to be loved. It's only when you combine these three profound truths: decisions, boundaries, and brutal honesty with yourself, that you begin to transform. You stop chasing after loves that are shallow, transactional, and based on pretenses. You start building relationships that reflect your unshakable integrity, the kind of relationships where you are seen for all you are, not for the role you play in someone else's emotional drama. There comes a moment, a breaking open of the soul, when everything you've felt, everything you've suffered through, and everything you've understood suddenly aligns. It's as though the universe hands you a mirror that's been waiting for you to hold it up to your face. And when you finally do, you see yourself fragile, broken, but also deeply hopeful. And for the first time in a long time, healed. That moment is life-changing. It's the start of something new, something that won't just move you, but will show you that everything you've endured, every tear you've shed, has been leading you right here, to this very moment, this profound recognition of your true self, to freedom, to a new beginning. This story isn't just about love or relationships, it's about awakening to the truth of who you are, the truth that has been buried under years of emotional neglect and self-deception. And if you stay until the end, you'll see that your journey, your emotional trials are not pointless. They're what's been shaping you, preparing you for the ultimate breakthrough. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 4 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Ethan, a 33-year-old man, thought he had found something sacred the first time he saw her. She was magnetic, unpredictable, intelligent, the kind of person who seemed to possess the kind of energy that could pull him from the deepest parts of himself. She looked at him with such intensity, as if she could read his soul. But the truth, as he would come to realize, was far more painful. She wasn't reading his soul. She was reading his emptiness. And in his desperate desire to be loved, to be seen, he mistook that as love. Ethan grew up with a father who communicated only in silence, a mother who never understood how to set healthy boundaries. He believed that to be loved, he had to be useful, perfect, and flawless. And when she came into his life, he saw her as the answer to all his emotional voids. But love, real love, isn't about filling voids. It's about two complete people coming together, not two people trying to fix each other's pain. Still, Ethan fell for her charm. In the beginning, it seemed like the perfect connection. She praised him, sought him out, and even needed him. But over time, the cracks began to show. Silences turned into punishments. Criticisms disguised as humor. Apologies that never came with the change. He told himself this was just how relationships worked. Ups and downs, moments of struggle, sure, but that they were still in love. He told himself that her strong personality was just her way of loving him, that her indifference, her sarcasm, her contempt, yes, even when she humiliated him in front of his friends, was just a misunderstanding. Every time he tried to express his pain, to tell her how deeply hurt he was, she laughed or changed the subject. And each time Ethan doubted himself, he began to believe he was too sensitive, too dramatic. The very things she called him, he internalized as truth. He began to question his perceptions, his feelings. He would lock himself in the bathroom to ask himself, am I losing my mind? But what he didn't know then was that what he was experiencing was gaslighting, an insidious manipulation that made him question his reality. And instead of walking away from the situation, he tried harder. In his mind, if he could just be more patient, more understanding, stronger, maybe she would turn back into the woman she once was. But deep down, Ethan was already losing himself. One night, after a brutal argument where she belittled him, screamed that he was useless, and walked away, leaving him in silence, Ethan did something he'd never done before. He walked away with no destination in mind, feeling the weight of an invisible burden in his chest. He didn't know what was happening, but he felt oppressed, trapped by something bigger than the argument itself. And then, as he sat on a park bench, the unthinkable happened. For the first time, he asked himself a question that would change everything. What if this isn't love? What if this is not okay? And in that moment, a quote from Jung hit him like a lightning bolt. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing the inner soul. Suddenly, it all clicked. He had been running from his soul. He had been so consumed by the need to be loved, to be seen, that he had ignored the damage it was doing to his very essence. The next day, Ethan booked an appointment with a therapist. He didn't even know what to say. All he could do was cry. He spoke through tears, telling the therapist he felt empty, confused, exhausted, and trapped. in a cycle he couldn't understand. He didn't know why he kept loving someone who made him feel invisible, unworthy. The therapist, with infinite kindness, simply said, "You're not in love, Ethan. You're trapped in an unresolved emotional repetition." And from that moment, the healing began. In each therapy session, Ethan faced the parts of himself he had buried for so long, the angry, hurt child within, the part of him that craved approval and acceptance, the part of him that had learned to survive through emotional neglect. It was painful. Oh, it was so painful. But for the first time, amid the pain, Ethan felt alive. He started reading Jung's words with a kind of reverence, like a man discovering water for the first time after walking through a desert. He wrote his favorite quotes on his mirror, like mantras. "There's no awakening of consciousness without pain. Everything that irritates us about others can lead to an understanding of ourselves. Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart." Through therapy, he understood that he had normalized unacceptable behaviors because they were all he knew. His first model of love was emotional abandonment. It's no wonder he felt at home when ignored, because the familiar isn't always healthy. One afternoon, after another explosive argument with her, Ethan did something that stunned him. Instead of guilt, instead of anxiety, he felt something new. He felt clarity. That clarity, which came like a rush of fresh air, became his first act of dignity. He didn't shout. He didn't beg. He simply said, "No more." And with that one statement, everything changed. She looked at him like he was crazy. She told him he'd regret it, that no one would love him like she did. But Ethan knew something now that he hadn't known before. Love that doesn't respect you isn't love. It's control. And in that moment, he chose himself. He chose to leave. The first days were brutal. Loneliness, confusion, relapses. But each time the urge to go back crept up on him, he'd read his notes, returned to his therapy, and write to his inner child, "I won't leave you alone anymore." And that promise became his new life contract, a sacred vow he made to himself. Little by little, he rediscovered who he was. He walked without fear, he ate without anxiety, he read without criticism, he laughed without asking for permission. He existed, finally, without guilt. He learned that he wasn't weak for having tolerated so much. He was strong for choosing to leave, because, as Jung said, the encounter with oneself is the most terrifying act there is. And Ethan had met himself hurt, yes, but whole, in a way he had never been before. As the days passed, he surrounded himself with people who validated him, who listened, who cared. He realized that love didn't have to hurt to be real. Tenderness wasn't weakness, it was courage. The day she reached out, asking him to come back, Ethan didn't feel fear or anxiety. He felt compassion. He didn't hate her. He simply understood. She hadn't started her journey, but he was already far along his own. Calmly, he blocked her number and kept walking. He didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore, because for the first time in his life, Ethan finally knew who he was, and that was enough. From that moment on, self-respect became Ethan's guiding star. The true miracle wasn't just leaving her, it was the profound discovery of himself. After enduring years of emotional betrayal, living with inner abandonment, and enduring the deafening silences that no one seemed to hear, Ethan had finally reclaimed his soul. He had come home to himself, and that was all he ever needed. His self-rediscovery became the starting point of his transformation. When Ethan shared his story in a support group, tears began to flow from others. As they listened, they saw their struggles reflected in his words. And for the first time, they realized they weren't alone. Ethan's story became a beacon of hope for them, showing them that it was possible to break free from the chains of emotional dependency, to truly love themselves again, and to step into a life of freedom and authenticity. Ethan no longer sought love the way he once had. He wasn't desperately searching for validation anymore. Instead, he sought love to share it, because love, true love, is always meant to be shared. not a tool to fill the hollows of one's heart. He had stopped being an emotional beggar. He was no longer in need of anyone to prove his worth. He had become whole, and in that wholeness, everything began to change. Today, Ethan lives with awareness, calm, and gratitude, not because he's free from pain or wounds, but because he has integrated them. He has transformed those wounds into deep roots that now support his growth, and from those roots, he blooms, not despite his pain, but because of it. There's a quiet strength in him. Now, a peace that comes from no longer fighting what once hurt him. The deepest truth he discovered through this journey of healing is this: there are behaviors you should never have tolerated, but today you understand you don't have to tolerate them anymore. You've awakened, and from this awakening, no one can ever again make you forget your worth. Ethan's journey is a shining example of what Carl Jung called individuation, the deeply personal process of returning to oneself, of confronting the unconscious, and in doing so, finding the fullness of one's soul. Ethan didn't just leave a toxic relationship. He left a version of himself that was emotionally dependent, one that had been molded by past wounds, expectations, and the desire to please others. From the very beginning, Ethan had been trapped in a pattern that Jung had warned us about: projection. He didn't love her for who she truly was. He loved the idealized image of her that represented what he longed for in his unconscious mind. She was the reflection of everything he thought he needed to heal the deep affective voids he carried from childhood. But that wasn't love. It was survival, emotional survival, a desperate need to fill the emptiness he had felt for so long. When Jung said, "What is not made conscious becomes fate," he was speaking directly to Ethan's story. Ethan had been unconsciously repeating the patterns of his childhood. His emotional investment wasn't in the woman herself, but in the idea of being loved by someone emotionally unavailable. It was a painful echo of his relationship with his father, a man who communicated only in silence and whose love was never truly given. Ethan's tolerance for humiliation, criticism, and emotional manipulation wasn't weakness. It was the result of an emotional programming that taught him to endure pain and neglect, as long as it meant avoiding rejection. Freud's compulsion to repeat is exactly what happened to Ethan. His unconscious mind recreated the original trauma, hoping, maybe, that this time it would end differently. And all along, Ethan never explicitly asked for love. No, he begged for it in his actions, by pleasing, by silencing his voice, by justifying the unjustifiable. This is the kind of bond that Erich Fromm called immature love. It's a love where the need to possess the other person, to hold them close, outweighs the need for freedom and authenticity. This is the type of love that suffocates and consumes. It's the kind of love where one's voice is lost in a sea of doubts and silence. And that silence, the silence of 1,000 unspoken truths, was Ethan's prison. But when Ethan began to doubt his perception, we witnessed the cruel effects of gaslighting. Gaslighting, a form of psychological abuse, attempts to make the victim lose faith in their intuition, in their understanding of what is real. Jung's warning that those who do not trust their intuition are at the mercy of external control became Ethan's waking reality. Seeking therapy was his turning point. It was the moment when Ethan stopped blaming himself for everything. He began to observe himself, to become the observer of his life instead of the victim of it. This shift from guilt to awareness was pivotal in his therapeutic journey. It was, quite simply, the birth of his authentic self. Throughout his therapy, Ethan confronted his shadow, that elusive and often misunderstood part of us. The shadow isn't just about the darkness or the ugly parts of ourselves, it's about everything we've repressed. Our anger, our sadness, our repressed desires, our need to set boundaries. By integrating his shadow, Ethan stopped being a passive victim and began to reclaim his life, his power, and his voice. He began to stand up for himself in ways he never had before. Jung's wisdom took root in Ethan. The underlined passages in his books weren't mere words, they were anchors. helping him solidify the new truth his soul was embracing. Not everything that hurts is love. Not everything that stays is good. Not everything familiar deserves to be repeated. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 5 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Ethan's individuation process was excruciating because it required him to let go of his persona, the perfect, accommodating man who justified everything, endured everything. As Jung said, the ego must surrender for the soul to emerge. That's exactly what Ethan did. He shed his old self and allowed the truth of who he was to emerge. The therapist wasn't there to save him. She wasn't a figure of divine intervention. She was a mirror, someone who showed Ethan who he had been, not who he should be. From that awareness, Ethan could decide who he wanted to become. The therapy didn't provide the answers. It gave Ethan the tools to find them for himself. Writing became a key part of his journey. Through writing to his inner child, Ethan reconnected with the most vulnerable part of himself, the part that had been ignored, forgotten, and abandoned. When he promised his inner child, "I won't leave you alone anymore," he was reparenting himself, giving himself the love and care he had longed for all his life. This act of reparenting was profound. It was the beginning of emotional repair, a process that would forever change Ethan's relationship with himself. With time, these practices, these small moments of self-validation, would reduce his anxiety and deepen his self-compassion. The silences that once felt like punishment now became a sanctuary. They were no longer places of isolation. They were spaces where he could sit with his thoughts and find peace. Because now, Ethan no longer feared loneliness. He embraced it. He no longer feared being alone because he wasn't alone within himself. He had become his companion, his source of comfort, his guide. And in that new relationship with himself, he finally found the freedom he had been searching for all along. He no longer needed anyone to prove his worth. Because, as he had learned, his worth was never dependent on anyone else. It had always been inside him. The no more moment, in its purest form, isn't an outburst of anger. It's a profound moment of clarity. As Jung wisely said, consciousness hurts at first, but it liberates. And that's exactly what Ethan experienced. His newfound serenity wasn't born from bitterness or revenge. It emerged from a place of having seen everything for what it truly was and accepting it without judgment. The encounter with his ex wasn't some dramatic emotional climax. It wasn't about her or even the past relationship anymore. It was simply a moment of profound validation for Ethan, a testament to how far he had come. She hadn't changed. He had. That contrast between their emotional states, her unchanged self and his reborn sense of self, allowed Ethan to look at the situation from an emotional distance that he had never been able to before. It became crystal clear. He didn't need further proof of anything. He had already found the truth within himself, and that truth was more than enough. Blocking her wasn't an act of vengeance. It was an act of self-care. And when done from a place of calm, setting such a boundary becomes one of the highest forms of self-love. It's not about causing harm or seeking revenge. It's about protecting the sacred process of healing that had begun within him. For Ethan, setting this boundary was a way of saying, "I'm no longer available for this toxicity. My healing matters more than your opinions." The relationships that came into his life afterward weren't magical or immediate. They were natural reflections of his newly transformed inner vibration. As Jung taught, when we transform internally, the external world begins to reconfigure itself to align with the changes inside us. Ethan had stopped attracting the chaos and emotional dependency he once craved. Now, he began to attract what he was whole, self-aware, and peaceful. This wasn't just about attracting people. It was about attracting the right kind of love, the kind that mirrored his growth and self-worth. Jung's wisdom rang true in Ethan's life. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. Ethan's liberation wasn't just from a toxic relationship, It was from a version of himself that had been trapped in emotional dependency and self-doubt. In his journey, he learned that life's meaning is often found in the inner reconnection that gives you the strength to endure any pain. As Viktor Frankl once said, the meaning of life is what allows you to endure any pain. Ethan had found that meaning, and it came from returning to himself. Sharing his story with others became the final piece of his healing puzzle. It wasn't just a cathartic release, it was a way for him to integrate the pain, to transform it into something that could help others. The pain that once held him captive became wisdom that he could offer as a gift to those still struggling. In Jungian terms, Ethan had become the wounded healer, someone who, by embracing and healing their wounds, could now help others do the same. Ethan's transformation wasn't a one-time event, it was a process, an ongoing journey that forever changed him. Once you truly choose yourself, once you step into the power of self-acceptance, there's no going back. You can't betray yourself again without feeling the unbearable emptiness that comes from abandoning your truth. That void is the soul's way of reminding you that you've awakened, that you can never fall back asleep in the face of mistreatment and self-neglect. This kind of transformation isn't instantaneous. It's gradual, but it's irreversible. Consciousness, once activated, can never be turned off. It may rest for a time, but it never completely vanishes. The story of Ethan reminds us that sometimes we have to hit rock bottom before we start rising, but that bottom isn't a punishment. It's a threshold, a door. It's the place where we leave behind what we were and step into the power of what we're about to become. It's the space where we reclaim what we had forgotten about ourselves, the worth, the dignity, the power that was always ours, waiting to be remembered. Ethan represents all of us who have ever lost ourselves in trying to love others, who have believed we deserved less than we were worth, who mistook intensity for love, silence for peace, and pain for connection. His story shows us that healing isn't a destination. It's a journey filled with doubts, tears, setbacks, but also moments of light, courage, and freedom. Once you walk the path of self-liberation, nothing is ever the same again. Jung often spoke about becoming who you truly are as the soul's greatest purpose. This isn't achieved by pleasing others, enduring endless pain, or disappearing into the background. It's achieved by choosing yourself, by making your truth your guiding principle. The key to Ethan's healing wasn't just about leaving the toxic relationship, it was about looking at himself in the mirror, seeing his worth, and choosing to honor that truth above all else. That gaze, the radical honesty with oneself, is what gives birth to a new life. It's a life where you no longer tolerate what breaks you, where you no longer make excuses for mistreatment or neglect. The bravest thing you can do today is not to fight for acceptance, but to stop tolerating what diminishes your spirit. Ask yourself, how many times have you called what was simply fear of being alone love? How many times have you stayed in a relationship out of habit, guilt, or the absurd belief that the bad you know is somehow better than the unknown? How much longer will you justify mistreatment as just a series of bad moments, instead of seeing it for what it truly is, a violation of your worth? Can you remember the last time you stayed silent to avoid losing someone? What parts of yourself did you lose in that silence? What would happen if today, instead of staying silent, you chose to speak not to hurt, but to honor your truth? Have you thought about how every time you tolerate the intolerable, you're permitting the other person to keep treating you this way? That your silence is interpreted as acceptance, and your soul registers it as abandonment? What does it say about you that you continue seeking love from people who don't know how to truly care? What old story are you still reliving? Is your partner the source of your pain, or are they simply reflecting a wound that was already there? Where is your voice in this story? Where is your no more? How much longer will you wait for the other person to change while you continue to diminish yourself in the process? This is the power of choice, the power of reclaiming your voice, your truth, and your boundaries. The story of Ethan is a reminder that you are enough, right now, in your brokenness, in your healing, in your wholeness. Choose yourself and watch everything else fall into place. As we wrap up Ethan's journey, I want you to take a moment and reflect on what you've learned today, what resonated with you the most. Is there a piece of his story that made you realize something about your own life? How can you apply the lessons from his transformation to your journey? I encourage you to share in the comments below one thing you've learned and are committed to bringing into your life moving forward. Whether it's setting healthier boundaries, embracing your self-worth, or choosing to stop tolerating what breaks you, let's keep this conversation going. If you found value in this video, please leave a comment below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. Your support helps us continue sharing these life-changing messages. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Take care, and remember you are worthy of the love and respect you give to others.